expressed during the related show are those of the show personalities and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes, to renting versus selling, and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live. 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Every week we talk about something that will help you make a little money, save a little money, or maybe just help you navigate this crazy world that we live in. Today we're going to talk about mortgages, and we're here with our wonderful mortgage lender, Max Fisch with Nationwide Mortgage. Welcome, Max.
Thanks, as always, for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, a lot going on in the mortgage industry right now.
Tons.
Number one is, back in July, was it July?
July 1st, yeah.
July 1st, Hometown Heroes came out. Hometown Heroes had $100 million the first time.
Yep.
How much did they have the second time?
Well, this time around they had $100 million.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first time was 100 last July. Then in November of last year was 36 million, and then they refunded it another 100 million this year.
Yeah. Then it ran out
Yeah.
from the last time we had a show.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a couple of funds bounced back, and why is that?
Well, because when we're talking about the funds that are allocated for Hometown Heroes, the state gives funds, but it's almost like it's not a grant, it's a loan, right? So it's a lien that's put on somebody's house, and if they refinance, they sell, or if they move out of that and rent it and buy a new primary residence, those funds have to be replenished with the state. So the people that used it last year that are now refinancing, the people that used it last year that are now selling, those funds are being replenished almost every day.
So you might always be able to, even though they say that the funds are out, you can still ask your local lender or Max Fisch.
Yep.
If there's any funds available.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's randomized when they make those funds accessible. But the reality too is that those funds are locked when somebody goes under contract and the rate is locked, right? Those funds are being secured.
Okay.
However, when those funds, if that specific transaction doesn't close, let's say hypothetically,
Right.
then those funds were never actually funded or used.
So they just go back.
So
into
they
the
just
pot.
go back into the pot.
We
Correct.
actually have a question from the audience. So, hi.
I have a question.
Sure.
I've never heard of Hometown Heroes. I have no clue what you're talking about. Who qualifies for that? And what
Originally,
What's it
it
about?
was heroes, like people that were in the military.
Okay, military.
Originally.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now
That,
it
and
qualifies.
school teachers, they consider
Yeah.
them to be heroes because I guess they got to deal with those
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
in
yeah.
the school.
So now Hometown Heroes, as long as you work for a Florida-based employer,
Okay.
Not so that gets tricky.
it gets very tricky because
like,
sometimes
Home Depot really isn't a
Correct.
Florida-based.
Correct. So the employer has to be based out of Florida,
Okay.
and you can qualify for the program, which is awesome.
Okay. First
Yeah.
time home buyers? or-
First-time home buyers,
Okay.
Florida-based employer, and you can't make more than $158,000 a year
Okay.
for whoever's on the loan.
Got it. So now I have clarity. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
no problem.
Of course.
Yeah. So that I see that funds keep coming and going. So that's
Yeah.
good. So that's definitely, I think our audience needs to know that they should reach out to you and ask you, hey, can you check? And what do? You go into a database and you just kind of like.
Yeah, there's a database that we have access to that shows if the funds are available and shows how much of the funds are available. Really, it's not an ever-changing pot, right? Even if the funds are being replenished, we have to have access to those from the state, right? And the state chooses when they're going to make those funds accessible and when they don't.
Okay.
July 1st, they replenished another 100 million, but for all intents and purposes, those funds could have been replenished months prior. It's just July 1st is when the state gave us access to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the money that came out, is it still accessible?
Currently today, no.
So when did that end?
That ended, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, 3 weeks
Okay.
ago. They replenished yesterday, or not yesterday. They replenished on Tuesday, but then they closed them again yesterday.
So Tuesday to Wednesday.
Yeah. Yep.
That
Now
was it.
that doesn't mean that those funds were gone. It's just they didn't. They're not accessible currently.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like it's a timing thing.
Can you extend the lock?
No. So unless I've had it happen to me one time where there was an unforeseen circumstance and they granted a 7-day extension. It wasn't anybody in the transaction's fault. It was something that happened with the IRS and there was a delay with something, and they let us extend
how about
for
an
7 days.
association approval? Hasn't been quite 30 days.
No, so I had that situation. I had that situation one time, and they did not grant an extension for association approval, simply because, in essence, they're going to require documents that say you have 30 days to get that, and your lock is for 30 days. So, in essence, you should.
Yeah, but that's a hard one because
I know.
The lock is 30 days. It's not 30 business days.
Sure.
Right?
So do
But
HOAs?
it's 30 business days.
30 business days. So
you're
that's-
really put in a very, it's a quandary.
I guess at the end of the day, if we could, as lenders, provide documentation that says 30 business days from the
Right.
association, then maybe we would have a shot at extending.
Right.
But they don't. They extend for very, very few circumstances, and that's what makes it difficult. As a lender, if you go under contract and you know that there's going to need to be extensive association approval, or you know that something might take a little bit longer in the transaction, then you might need to give yourself a week or two before you lock that rate.
And God knows what, yeah. And the thing is that I think that if there's a lack of communication, and I think that, I know we go back to this all the time, but
Yeah.
being experienced as a realtor, as a lender, and, listen, you could be a mortgage lender for 30 years,
Sure.
but if you only close one deal a year, you don't really have experience.
Sure, and it's an ever-changing business,
Right.
as you know, right?
And you really need to have your pulse on it. You
Yeah.
really just have to have your pulse on what you're doing. So
Yeah, I mean, if you've had your license for 30 years, you've probably needed to change your business model by now, what, 3, 4, 5 times?
I would think more than
More
that,
than that,
even
maybe,
because
yeah.
it feels like yesterday, and this is probably before you were in it, but 10 years ago, they were trying to get rid of mortgage brokers. Like they were trying to,
I know.
like they've changed how you guys disclose your money, how
Yep.
the loans get funded. It's really crazy. But I
Yeah.
do want to put it out there that if anybody does want to call in, we are taking calls at 888-994-4995, Studio A, and we definitely can answer any questions you have. Max can. So I know that we also have talked about in the past, and I know we talked about DSCR loans,
Yep.
and we've also talked about the rates. And are
Yeah.
the rates going to come down? So I think we should go to commercial break, and when we
Sure.
come back, I think we should talk about what are we looking at in the future.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fisch, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fisch is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fisch today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
At JK Closing Attorneys, we do all of the same things that a title company does, but with the benefits of being a law office. We can help with residential real estate, short sales, commercial real estate, refinances, 1031 exchanges, and FIRPTA withholding.
Contact JK Closing Attorneys today at 954-332-3111. Again, that is 954-332-3111.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at theloracell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. We're here today with Max Fisch from Nationwide Mortgage, and we're talking about interest rates. We're talking about getting free money. It's not technically free, but it's kind of free. We're talking about free money. We're talking about interest rates. So what's going on? Are we going to get in the fives or what?
So for some scenarios, we're already there.
Really?
Right. And FHA loans, we're in the mid fives to upper fives. Conventional, even depending on a down payment, you can get in the upper fives right now with good credit.
Really?
Yeah. So we're headed in the right direction. The fear here is, and not to be too negative, right? But the fear is that if we think that, and by we I mean just the general population, right? If we think that we've unlocked the secret to determining how rates are going to respond and react, we are sadly mistaken, right? And from what I'm hearing a lot in the market, in speaking to clients, is, hey, the Fed is going to lower the rate in the next couple weeks,
Right.
right? But what we need to understand is interest rates are more proactive than reactive. They're more proactive than we think. And the market isn't like, the market's head isn't in the sand and doesn't know what the Fed is going to do in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
It's already built in to what we're seeing in the recent rate drop in the last 30 to 45 days is because of the news that the Fed is going to do what they're going to do. So the fear is that if they do anything else other than what the market is expecting them to do, that could be bad for interest rates.
But it's also like, okay, so now I feel like right now, which I feel it's a little slow.
Sure.
Right? Now, I'm sure you have a lot of people you've pre-approved, but they're going, well, I'm waiting to see what the Fed does. I'm waiting to see what the Fed does, right? So what does that do? It's like they're out looking so that maybe they can pull the trigger when the Fed does whatever the Fed's going to do.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that I don't think it's going to be enough to make a difference right now.
Yeah.
Like maybe in 2 years from now, maybe they see it go down 1.5 points and then they refinance. But I'm in the school of, if I love the home, I should make an offer and buy it if I can afford it.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the dynamic there a little bit, because number one, let's myth bust for a second. Number one, the federal interest rate is not directly tied to mortgage rates, right? The federal interest rate is directly tied to consumer debt, car loans, credit cards, equity lines.
Don't we have a lot of debt?
We do. What the federal interest rate does, though, is it tells us that we're moving in the right direction as an economy as it pertains to inflation.
Okay.
That affects mortgage rates. Okay? That's number one. Number two, let's just look at recent history. And I have this conversation with clients all the time, right? When they say what you just mentioned. In December of 2023, so what, 8 months ago, 9 months ago now? In December of 2023, there was a rate drop. So prior to that, rates were 7-8%.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy.
There was a rate drop in December down to the mid sixes. Why? Because there was news that came out in Q1 of this year that the Fed was going to lower interest rates. Well, guess what happened when Q1 came? The Fed didn't lower interest rates. So what happened to the market? It shot back up into the sevens because the market was building in something that the Fed didn't end up doing, right?
Okay.
And again, if we try to say in our minds, hey, when the Fed drops interest rates this month, that's going to be very impactful for mortgage rates in a positive way. Well, what if mortgage rates are building in that the Fed is going to decrease rates by 0.5%, and they only decrease rates by 0.25%? What happens?
Yeah.
Rates will go up, and people will be confused. Hey, why did the Fed lower rates, and rates actually went up? Mortgage rates went up.
And you know what's funny though? I'm in the business. And I don't really hear about rates all the time.
Sure.
I mean, you would think that I would, cross my feed, across, like...
Yeah. It's because people don't want to talk about it. It's one of those things right now where consumers are into it a lot, especially if you're in the market to potentially want to purchase a home, because there's this understanding among people, right, that they want to time it correctly. And what they mean by time it correctly now is not about purchase price, it's about interest rate. The problem is those two things are directly correlated.
Right.
It's a simple supply and demand. If interest rates drop and more people want to buy, then what does that do to prices?
Right.
It drives them up, right? So you're on this teeter-totter of rates are high, prices are low, right, or moderate. Rates are low, prices are high. right? And so that's why we as professionals, people think we're just being salesy, but we're really not.
Yeah,
We're
I just believe buy what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can afford it. If you can't afford it, don't buy it.
Listen, I've said it on the show a bunch of times, and I'm sure that a lot of people have heard it, but the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. There's no
because that will be 20 years from now, right?
Correct. There's no timing it.
We've talked about that before, and I feel that. Like, I have clients that bought in 2007, 8, right?
Yeah.
So imagine now their house is worth twice as much. They're
Sure.
making money, but when 2010 came, they bought in 2007. They were upside down,
Yeah.
right? So, but now you look at them and you're like, wow, you're a genius.
Yeah.
When they go to sell, so that is something that I am definitely a big believer in, is that buy today, because in 20 years from now, if you didn't, and I have people that are still renters from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
You're on a hamster wheel.
yeah, and
You're like
you're never
constantly
going to
trying
get
to
off
make-
of it if you don't,
Yeah.
listen. And then it's funny because, way back it seemed like, okay, people that were renting, it seemed like a good idea because you don't have to take care of the air conditioner, you don't have to replace anything, right? But if you stay there for 10 years, your landlord's not going to give you new carpet every 10 years.
Yeah.
If you decide to do something, that's going to be on you.
Sure. You know what's funny is that Dave Ramsey said this. You know Dave
Yeah,
Ramsey,
yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
Dave Ramsey said, and I don't agree with everything he says, but he said that finances are 80% behavior and 20% math.
Okay.
And what's funny about that statement is you see it all the time that I'll use 2008, for example. People got so caught up in what the value of their home was at that time
They let it go.
that they did drastic and irrational things where if you could just look at somebody in the face and say, it doesn't matter what your home is worth unless you want to sell. If you are going to live
Right.
there, if you are going to live there and you can afford your mortgage payments, then it doesn't matter what your home is worth. Because what happens is, just like in the stock market or just like any of these things that appreciate over time, you have down,
Yeah, it's
and
like a
then you
mutual
have back
fund.
up. So if you look at the home values, there was like a year or two, 12 or 24 months where home values were down like 37%. And then what happened the following years? And tick back up higher than they were prior.
Well, you hear something crazy. So I have a couple of rentals, right? And I had one rental that I had a guy in there for, he went in for $1,400 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, 15 years later, I had him at $1,600. That's like nothing, right? Do you know he called me and said, I have to move, I can't afford this. I'm like, do you know the market rent in that neighborhood is $2,400 and you're paying
Yeah.
$1,600 and I'm leaving you because you've been there for so many years?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you can't afford it. So fast forward 2 days ago, I got a text message from a tenant that has lived in the property since 2011, 12. They've been with me, so that's 12 years.
Yeah.
They're paying $1,800 for a house that I could probably get $3,000, and they called and said, we have to move, we can't afford it. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's well, you know, in reality, as an economy as a whole, the reason why inflation is slowing is because the Fed is accomplishing exactly what they've sought out to do, which is to make people stop spending money. There are people across our country that are hurting right now, economically speaking.
It's scary.
But that is what, and I don't mean to sound insensitive, I really
Yeah.
don't. But that is what needed to happen to reset things, because things were completely out of control post-COVID. The
Still
amount
out
of
of
money,
control.
the amount of money. I talk to people that, I talk to 17-year-old kids that put $1,000 in GameStop and overnight became. You remember when that whole thing happened?
Oh, yeah,
and
that was all
overnight
fake,
became.
though.
Yeah, but it was all. But what my point is people were just throwing around money, borrowing against margin because everything was just exploding, and the Fed said, "This can't happen for an economy, or else things are going to burst." So that's why the Fed rate started to tick up, because they wanted things to get expensive. They wanted people to stop spending money so that things could reset and then potentially start to come back down.
Yeah, but if you look, it's not always right, Zillow, but a lot of times it does have some good information on it. If you look, you're seeing home prices coming down, coming down,
Yeah.
coming down, coming down. And I'm just going, what is going on here? So
Yeah, it's because people don't want to.
I have a listing agreement signed from 4 months ago. We were supposed to put it on the market. What ended up happening is there was a bunch of open permits on the house.
Yeah.
So I said to them, listen, you got to get these closed out. They had to go back and get plans drawn. It was like a whole addition added
Yeah.
on that the contractor never closed out. So the number that we talked about 4 months ago and the number that we talked about today is I was just like, this is mind-boggling.
It's expensive. It's expensive for everybody. But again, in my opinion, there's light at the end of the tunnel because these things needed to happen to reset. And then hopefully we can have a new floor and then build from there,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does, but I know that definitely like we're seeing condos taking a huge, so I guess how is that looking in the market for you guys? Like what are investors saying about that? Like I know you have
Well, investors with cash.
no, I mean investors like for the mortgages.
Oh,
like,
got it,
you know,
got it.
you have like cuz you have different programs out
Yeah.
there and
Well, investors right now with cash or with mortgage, they love condos right now because
you're talking about investors like buyers, like
investor buy. Yes.
right. Okay.
Yes.
Why do they love condos?
They love condos because, and myself included, I would love, I think there's a lot of value in the condo market right now because I think that there's a lot of places that you can buy at good value while all of this work is being done. If you can find a way to attain it, right? Because it's hard to finance those units.
Right.
And so it makes it less marketable when it's not easy to finance. So all
Right.
of this work that's being done, if you can get it at a good value, once all of this work is done on these condo associations, concrete restoration, roofs, all of
once
these
it's
things.
done. But how do you?
How do you break
protect
into the market?
How do you protect yourself to
Yeah.
know, like, are they done assessing?
Yeah, I mean, you can never really know for sure, but what you can do is you can ask for meeting minutes of the
Yeah.
condo association so you can see what they've been talking about, what their plans are for assessments. You can review their financials, their budget, their balance sheet to see, okay, if anything does major come up, if they do fail this on a 40-year inspection report, do they have the money to pay for it? If they don't have any money in reserves in their balance sheet or their budget, then they're going to need to get it from somewhere, and they're going to get it from all the unit owners.
Right.
Right, and that by way of special assessment. So there's due diligence items that you can do up front to check to see if it's a safe investment. But I really think that if you can get into it in the next few years, the condo market, in my opinion, is going to skyrocket because all of these condo associations are going to have brand new everything, and they're going to be easily financeable, which is going to make them worth a lot of money.
So what I typically say is when you see the masses running the other way, you should run towards it.
Yes, in general.
In general.
In general,
Unless it's
like
a tsunami.
Yeah, unless like a tiger like escapes the zoo.
Yeah, but the likelihood that would happen isn't very likely. So
So yeah,
that's
so,
all right. You'll get them with your guns. Oh, that was the inappropriate.
That's what you said
Yes,
something about the other day.
okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So, what is a good way for people to reach out to you if they're looking for an amazing mortgage lender?
Always by cell phone. By text, call any time of the day, 954-729-6933. That's 954-729-6933.
You notice he said any time of the day. He didn't say in the middle of the night.
Well, I mean, if I'm awake, I'll answer.
And if you're looking for an amazing realtor, you could definitely give me a call. I definitely consider myself to be an expert on condos, and you can check us out on my YouTube channel with a lot of our shows that are definitely showing you our knowledge on that. So, you know, we're kind of getting ready to the end of running out of time, but I always like to bring this one thing up because I actually had a client recently that didn't know about this and didn't know about the DCSR loan. So let's go over that real quick just because that's a great investment product that is still out there. So
I'm going to make you say it again, though.
Did
What
I
is
say it wrong?
Yeah, what kind of loan is it?
DSCR?
DSCR, there it is.
Did I say it wrong?
Yeah, you said DCSR.
DCSR. DCSR.
DSCR.
DSCR. Whatever.
We've done that a million times.
I know. I have a problem with it.
No, it's okay. The DSCR loan is pretty much a no-income verification loan for investors. Now, it's cool because It goes based off of market rent. So whatever the market rent is, if it covers the mortgage payment, then you pretty much attain the loan. But what I do want to talk about, to piggyback off of that, is there's actually a new loan program out that we didn't talk about this
Is it for
prior. So it's gonna
Airbnbs?
no, it's for primary residences that are no income verification.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, we got 1 minute, so hurry up. Forget
So-
about the other one. Let's talk about
so
this.
now,
This sounds
so
great.
now, if you have 25% down and you have 9 months of reserves left over, for those of you who don't know, reserves are if you have 9 mortgage payments left over in your account after
Okay.
down
Is
payment
this
and
like a
closing
bank
costs.
statement loan?
No, there's
No.
no income verification.
Oh, okay.
If you have
yes,
25%
okay.
down, you have over a 680 score, you can get a primary residence without any income verification. No taxes, no pay stubs, no W-2s. We're not going to be doing bank statement loan where we look at income there. Nothing.
And as long as you have 9 months of mortgage,
And
that
25%
sounds
down.
so risky.
Well, they look at it and they say, okay, they're putting 25% down. They have 9 months left over of their mortgage, right? And they have over a 680 score, so they have a history of paying things on time. That's the risk they're willing to take.
So everybody, if you're thinking about buying a home, you do not have a job, but you've got cash in the bank,
There it is.
give Max a call. And like always, want to thank you very much for watching and listening to Making Money with Laura Sanders. Till next week.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827. Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. We look forward to seeing you next week.